The 3 biggest mistakes yoga teachers make in class, specifically hot yoga because that's what I'm an expert at, but it really applies to yoga teachers of any style. We're going to go over all 3 today. You want to implement all 3. If you don't implement all 3, it could be the reason why you're not having that true connection that you want to have in class and being a more effective yoga teacher. And the third one is by far the most important, so make sure to stay all the way at the end so you can implement all 3 into your next class. Tip number 1 is to know your script, to understand it inside and out so that the words can flow freely. In the Bikram rule, they have you memorize the script. They call it the dialogue. In the dictionary, let me read you the definition of a dialogue: a conversation between 2 people. Bikram loved me so much because I was one of the few people that could correct him, especially his English. I say, Bikram, it's not a dialogue, it's a monologue. Let's look up the word monologue in the dictionary. That's one person talking in class. So whatever you want to call it, monologue, dialogue, script, you got to know it inside and out. Now, as a beginning teacher, what I highly recommend that you do is practice the script out loud. When I'm talking about script, I'm talking about the cues, commands, instruction, what you want your students to be doing in the classroom. The words are not going to come to you by the grace of God, especially if you're a new teacher, because if you're a new teacher, if you start fumbling with the words, you're going to lose your students. The students want you to come in with extreme confidence and take over that classroom, lead them through a nice sequence, a nice flow. And if you stumble, if you hesitate, and if the words are not flowing out of your mouth, you're going to lose your students. They're going to lose confidence in you. Now, in the Barkan teacher training programs, I don't have you memorize the script. I want you to address all the necessary bullet points that pertain to that particular pose or the sequence that you're teaching. And if you're interested in taking the Barkan method teacher training program, we have live trainings and an online course. And the online course, you could start today. I put links in the description below. We'd love to have you join the family. That's how you're able to find your own unique style, your authentic voice. And that's how we were taught in the old days. I think I was the 8th yoga teacher that Bikram certified back in 1981, and we didn't have a script. The very first time I had to teach, Bikram had to go to the bathroom. So he looks and he sees I was the most experienced student in the class. He says, Jimmy, you talk. And so I instantly had to get into the words and I let those words flow out of my mouth. So that's what you have to do. Like I say, it's not going to come with the grace of God, especially if you're nervous, if you're self-conscious, if you're a beginning teacher. Having the words down and rehearsing them out loud is key. I want you to hit the subscribe button. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Share it with your friends if you want to learn all about hot yoga, learning flows, tutorials, factoids like this video. Hit the subscribe and like button right now. And that pertains even if you have to memorize a script. Practicing the words out loud. You're not hesitating. They're coming out in a nice, fluid way. I can't really relate to that as a yoga teacher because I'm teaching over 42 years. I've calculated I've taught over 100,000 classes. So for me, the script is natural. And therefore, when it's natural, you can work on other things in communications that we're going to talk about a little bit later in the other tips. But I can relate. Some of you may not know I have a second career, a part-time career. My original dream is to be a singer and entertainer, and I still do that in South Florida, even though the pandemic sort of killed it, but now it's starting to come back up. I've got 3 gigs coming up. But when I perform on stage, and sometimes I'll have a small audience of 30, 40 people, but sometimes I'll have 500, 600, 700 people. You got 700 people in the audience looking up at you, and you start to fumble, you start to hesitate on what you want to say, because a lot of times I have banter in between my songs. You're going to lose the audience. And that's one of the most horrific feelings you can ever have, bombing on stage in front of 500 people and it's just you. You got 30 minutes left to go on your show. So I wanted to make sure that never happened, and I made sure that I practiced my banter out loud as much as I practiced my songs, so then the words are flowing freely. So as a yoga teacher, you want to do the same thing. You want to practice it out loud so you don't have to fumble with what you're going to say. You'll come across so much more confident, and the students are going to have more confidence in you, and now you create that synergy between you and the classroom. But if you don't have an exact script, that's why it's important for you to continue to practice. Sometimes you'll learn from your students, you'll say something to the class and they won't respond. So now you have to figure out another way of saying it so that you get their ear. Rodney, a good friend of mine who I met on the yoga circuit, I was doing his class in one of the Yoga Journal conferences, and somebody was doing a posture that was not what he was teaching in the classroom. She's off on her own, which sort of drove me nuts. Why go to a classroom if you're going to do your own thing? You might as well stay at home. So he says to her, he comes up to her, and he says it quietly so only she could hear, but I was right next to it, so I was right next to her so I could hear it. He says, it's taken me 25 years to calculate my words. Stay in class. So he was telling her two things. One, make sure you're doing what everybody else is doing so you don't distract other students. But the other part of that was it's taken him 25 years to calculate his words. So calculating your words is really important, and that's going to come with time. But once again, as a beginning teacher, continue to practice as much as you can out loud. Driving to that class, practice teaching out loud.
Practice, practice, practice.
To finish up with tip number one, as the words start to flow, you begin to develop your own unique style. That's something really Bikram didn't want to do. He wanted everyone to sort of copy him and repeat exactly what he was doing. But Bikram wouldn't stay on script. He would go off script all the time. Even if you're a Bikram teacher, you're definitely going to, at one point, you're going to start to go off script because your experience, you want to share your experience. And how you're going to do that is by practicing it, getting that experience, letting the words flow so you find your own unique sound or your own authentic voice. And that's what's going to separate you from any other yoga teacher because nobody can copy you. As much as Bikram wanted people to copy him, he never really wanted them to copy his uniqueness because that's what makes Bikram Bikram. What's going to make you you is finding your authentic sound, is finding your unique sound, finding that authentic voice. Mistake number two is that you're repeating a same pattern of speech. In other words, you sound the same throughout the entire class.
Listen, all your impressions sound the same.
Yeah. Or maybe you sound the same throughout the standing poses. And when you get to the floor, you're going to sound the same throughout the floor poses. We need to break it up. We need to break what I call break the pattern of speech. So there's a difference between a teacher voice an authentic voice. We have to have a teacher voice to get through a 90-minute class or a 60, 75-minute class. But I believe, in my experience, you need to break the pattern of that sound or create a variety of tone so that your words are now going to reach the student's ear. If you're in a repeated pattern of sound like elevator music, and especially if you're doing a Bikram class where everybody knows what's next, they know what the 26 postures, they know exactly what the next thing is, they're going to tune you out of pranayama breathing if you're constantly sounding the same way all the time. So we need to break the pattern, one, to sound more interesting, two, to be a more effective teacher, and three, so that you get their ear. If you want to tell them, you bring their upper body backward, don't lean forward, or whatever the command is, you want to say it in a different tone. Let me give you an example of what I mean. All right, for a posture like half moon, for example, which is in the Bikram flow and the Barkan flow, if you sound like this is what a teacher voice would sound like. Arms overhead, interlace the fingers, index finger release, take a deep breath in, reach over to the right, push your hips to the left, get your chest out, bring your arms back, lean back, reach back, all the way back. Now you're in a teacher voice. And it's a repeated pattern that sounds the same thing. So now, what we want to do is break the pattern. We can still keep the teacher voice, but break it up. Here's what I'm talking about. So arms overhead, interlace the fingers, take a deep breath in, reach over to the right, push your hips to the left. I'm still in a teacher voice. Here's how I change it up. We're not just reaching our arms to the right. We got to push our hips to the left. That creates the opposite direction. When we're creating an opposite direction, we're going to get that extension of that whole left side of the body. So that's the feeling you want to have, that opposite pull. Now you can go back to your teacher voice. Reach over, hips left, a little bit more. At the end, you can coach them. Exhale and come up. Now you're back to the teacher voice. So you want to find something, what I call the gem, in each pose and implement that, maybe 2 gems. It doesn't have to be the most important thing, but one thing that's important so you get their ear. So people actually turn their head. They'll go, oh, is he talking to me? It sounds like he's talking to me. Because when we're doing runner's lunge in the Bikram flow, that hip wants to come forward all the time. We want to pull that hip back, get that hips to square. So take a look in the mirror, look at your hip. You see how it's going forward? You're going to pull it back. That's an authentic tone. Opposed to right hip back, hips are square, we get a sing-song voice, we got to break the voice, because if you don't break this voice, your students are going to want to strangle you.
Oh my God, I'm going to strangle you.
And we can also give variety in our teacher voice. For example, in the Bikram and also in the Barkan flow is awkward pose, Utkatasana. There's 3 parts. Make every part sound differently. So take a deep breath in, inhale, sit right down like you're sitting on a chair, upper body back, the weights on the heels. You can lift your toes off the floor, reach your arms forward. That's my teacher voice. That's the first part. Inhale, come up. Second part, we're going to go up all the way to our toes as high as we can. That changes the whole equation. Take a deep breath in and now come down with a straight back. I've given it a different tone, a variety. Third part, now we're only going to come up on our toes a little bit. Bring your knees together. Different part of the same pose, but it's a different chapter and it's a different sound. So now we create variety of tone into our class. Once again, you're not just doing it to do it. You're not just doing it to be interesting. You're doing it to get the student's ear. So now your words are more effective, and that's what we're talking about, that connection, that synergy between you and the student. If you're sounding the same, the whole class, especially in the Bikram world, there's this, I call it the never-ending bullet point. It never ends. So they're going to bring your arms to the right, push your hips to the left, get the chest out, awkward pose, take a deep breath in, slowly go down, eagle pose, arms overhead, underneath the arm. Once again, bringing variety of tone. I call it the never-ending bullet points.
A never-ending story.
And here's another great tip to fix this. When you're giving a specific command, you want to resolve the sentence. Bring your arms to the right, push your hips to the left, chest out, arms back. So now that I've the end of the sentence, you hear how the end of the sentence sounds. I'm resolving the thought, opposed to letting all the words flow into each other. Resolve the thought. We're doing, let's say, hands to feet pose. You're going to get the stomach on the thighs, chest to the knees, face into the shins. That's what you can do to then press your face into the shins to get a better stretch in the hamstring. I'm resolving the thought. I'm not letting it all run together. So we want to break it up, get the student's ear. Now you become a more effective communicator. And that brings us to mistake number 3, putting way too much attention on yourself, not enough attention on the students. We need to flip that around. Your intention is to lead the students in the best possible practice you can and put your concern, put your energy on them and how they're doing, not on how you're doing. Because if you're putting the attention on you, you're now out of the moment. How am I doing? Are they liking me? Am I effective? Is this class going well? Am I out of my teacher voice?
It's not about you.
In fact, here's a great fix for that. Record yourself teaching in class. In my online teacher training programs, one of the assignments you have every week is you record yourself teaching, send me that recording, and I give you feedback and I can work with you and coach you one-on-one. Because it's easy for me to say and for you to hear, but to be coached to get to your authentic voice can make all the difference. So if you're interested in taking a teacher training program with me, 200, 300, 500 hour options available. I put links in the description below. We'd love to have you join the family. And recently I was reminded of this fact. I have a student right now on my teacher training program online course, and he's sending me videos, and his instinct is to put the attention on the students. You can see the intention behind the words, or what I call the subtext. He really cares for his students. Now he's got a little bit of an advantage because in this sort of mock classroom that he was creating to send me the videos so I could coach him, he had his 16-year-old daughter in the class. So he's now going to look at his daughter differently. He's more endearing towards his daughter because he really wants her to do the best that she can. So sometimes I'll do that in my live teacher training program. I'll create a scenario for them in class. I'll say, imagine you're at a holiday dinner in the United States. Let's say it's Thanksgiving dinner, and your cousins are over before dinner, and they say, you know what, Jimmy, teach me that yoga that you've been doing. I'd love to know what you're doing with the yoga class. If you take your cousins in the bedroom and you're going to start teaching them yoga, you're going to teach them differently than you're going to teach a normal classroom sitting. You're going to be less formal. You're going to be a lot more concerned with getting them to do the best that they can. You're not going to say, okay, cousins, arms overhead, interlace your fingers. You're not going to do that. You're not going to talk like that. You're going to be a lot more authentic. You're going to say, okay, here's how we do the half moon pose. Arms overhead, push your hips to the left, bring your arms to the right. Do you feel that? Do you feel that extension? That's the whole idea, is to get the extension in that left side of the body. That's the first warm-up stretch that we do. You're now going to sound differently because your concern is on them, not on how you're doing. You're the expert. You want to come into that room in front of your cousins that never did yoga. I don't care if you're a raw beginning yoga teacher, you're going to come in with confidence because you're the expert. That's the feeling you want to create in a normal classroom situation. Can you do that with 20 strangers? That's the trick, and that'll come with time.
I can do it. I can do it. I can do it.
But you can do, they call in acting an association. Imagine the whole room was filled with your 16-year-old daughters. You're going to teach them differently than 20 strangers. Now, one phrase that I'm famous for, it came up years ago in one of my live teacher training programs, is this: nervousness is selfishness. How are you going to break your self-consciousness? Because it's not about you. It's about them. It sort of goes into tip number 3. Get the attention off of yourself. Don't worry about how you're doing. If you're really concerned, record it. You can watch how you're doing later. Put the attention on them. When the attention's on them, you're going to know their practice, especially if they're coming to your class on a regular basis. You're going to know their practice better than they do. You can't see the forest from the trees. You got to go up top and you have that wonderful view. I can see how they're doing from afar. And every now and then, if you're in class, you want to switch your spot so the teacher can see you in a different place. You get sort of attached to that same spot. I'll tell you a quick story. Once in Beverly Hills, the class was starting and the woman's her favorite spot was in the corner, but somebody was walking toward her favorite spot. She took her towel, we had just towels back then, we didn't have yoga mats, and threw it over his head to land on her spot because she wanted that spot.
You're a little bit crazy.
Change your spot up. The teacher can see you in a different perspective. But the point is, get over yourself. Put the attention on them. Because if your focus is on your students doing the best possible yoga they can do, they're going to know that. They're going to sense it. If it's about you and how wonderful you look, especially if you're doing the postures with them, which I don't really suggest you do it on a regular basis because you're not peripheral. You're not going to be able to watch your students and see how they're doing. So you can encourage them and correct them. In a vinyasa class, sometimes it's sort of tricky because you can do it with them. That creates the energy going. But I always tell people, how can you look at your students if you're always doing your own practice? So look at them. When they sense it, your priority is them and not you. Big difference. Now they're going to adopt you as their coach because they know that you're going to take them to the next level because your concern is on them, not on yourself. Get the focus off yourself, put it on them. Nervousness is selfishness. That's how we can find that synergy. That's how we create the synergy between you and your students. So let's sum it up. Mistake number 1, fumbling with your words, not knowing your script. What's the fix? Practice out loud as much as you possibly can. Mistake number 2, sounding the same all the time. What's the fix? Break the pattern, variety of tone. Where's your authentic voice? Find that gem in each pose and tell them in your own conversation tone. Mistake number 3, putting way too much attention on yourself. Get it off yourself. Put it on them. The focus is on them. Your intention is to get them to do the best possible yoga you can. Not your intention is to teach the best yoga class you possibly can. Get the attention off of you. Put it on them. So that's our episode for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Hit the notification bell if you want to learn all about hot yoga, learning flows, tutorials, factoids. Hit the subscribe button right now, and I will see you the next video. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.